Hello, everyone. Welcome back into a fresh episode. It's been a while, Mr. Brandon Ramsey. A fresh episode of KSR's Zoom Action show, our basketball breakdown show here on the KSR YouTube channel. Brandon, we have a fun one in store today because Kentucky unexpectedly added a 15th roster addition to Mark Pope's year 3 on, I guess that was Saturday afternoon. Kind of had been that way for a couple weeks, but Mark Mitchell is officially a Kentucky Wildcat. We're going to spend the next hour or so breaking down all the film on that. Normally, we kind of open up with a bunch of discussion about Mark Mitchell or the player that we're talking about. We're going to save that for the end here. We're going to kind of jump right into the film from the jump. But before, we got to do some housekeeping things. First, like, comment, subscribe. If you haven't done all that stuff, make sure to do that right now, especially like and subscribe. It really helps our friend Stephen Peak, who is traveling all over the Bluegrass State today covering football stuff. So I'm going to be doing the producing on my own here, so bear with me a little bit on that. But yeah, make sure to like and subscribe. Shout out to everybody that's already here. We've already got about 60 viewers, it looks like, hanging out. And I'm going to pay some bills here with our quick ad read from our friend Andy Ludicky at myperfectfranchise.net. Those who have been around the KSR YouTube channel a long time are familiar with Andy. He's been a sponsor of ours for a long time. Got to chat with him the other week. He's a really nice guy, really knows what he's talking about. Really good mind for all this stuff. So let's chat a second about our good friend Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise. Are you a displaced corporate executive or wanting to put your career in your own hands? Or are you an experienced entrepreneur wanting to diversify? Well, Andy Ludicky and myperfectfranchise.net can help. Andy is a huge college sports fan and franchise veteran, having owned multiple franchises and businesses. Using his expertise, he helps others find their American dream through a very thorough consultation and evaluation process. Call Andy, put your life and career in your own hands. Best of all, his services are 100% free to you. So what do you have to lose, Brandon? Nothing. Find your perfect franchise at myperfectfranchise.net, or you can text or call him at 404-973-9901. Brandon, it's good to be back. First of all, you've been
great to be back.
Man. Yeah, you've been vacation man for the last month or so, it feels like. We were just talking about that sweet tan you've got going on. You're so bronze, I can just barely see you over there. Yeah, you're doing great. But we'll save all that fun stuff for the end here. Brandon, let's just go ahead and dive right into the film because that's why people are here. That's what they want to talk about. Mark Mitchell, two-time All-SEC forward from Missouri. Just a massive, massive addition for Mark Pope. We'll talk about all the implications of everything, of what it means for the team this next season going forward, all that fun stuff. But we've got about 6 different film clips here kind of queued up. Brandon, your first one is kind of a Mark Mitchell drives from the top type thing. I think all of your clips are against SEC opponents, I believe. And I used the one from the SEC tournament as well. So like good competition level here. We're not showing you stuff against other bad teams. I don't think, at least. I might bite my tongue a little bit later from looking from. I don't remember exactly who they're playing, but this is against Arkansas here. I think this is the game where he had 32 points or something like that as well. Mark Mitchell had a really good game here against Arkansas. But Brandon, I'm going to go ahead and play this first clip, and then I'm going to let your coaching brain do the talking so I can kind of take a sip of water and shut up for a second. But this is a kind of a good play to just illustrate some of the talents that Mark Mitchell will be able to bring to Kentucky. A little bit different flavor from what currently is on the roster at the 4th spot with Justin McBride and Usman Njai. But you see here, all that's going to happen is just kind of a simple, he gets the ball near the top of the key here, clear out a little bit of space. He knows he can kind of bully his way around Travion Brazil here. That's exactly what he does. Goes straight through the defense into the paint for an easy 2 right there. Brandon, first of all, kind of give us your just general thoughts on Mark Mitchell, and then tell me why plays like this are going to be important for Kentucky next season and how maybe they didn't have a guy who could do something like this, at least at the 4 spot going into next season.
Yeah, well, what I like about this clip and what I like about Mark Mitchell in general, especially the more and more that I watch him, he is a go-to scorer. Like, I very quickly over the last, pushing 48 hours now, have gotten to the point where if he plays, and we'll probably talk maybe a little bit more about that at the end of this show, but if he plays, my money is on him to lead Kentucky in scoring. He is the guy. Like, this guy just gets buckets. You can throw him the ball, and he creates something out of nothing. Obviously, Milan Momcilovic is coming over from having led Iowa State in scoring, and we know that he can accumulate points because all of his shots are worth 3. But I really do think that just kind of that go-to guy is going to be Mark Mitchell. To put it another way, I think the Otega Oweh type guy, where it's like on a night-to-night basis. Maybe it's not always the prettiest. Maybe you don't always know how he got there. Maybe it's a quiet 21 or whatever, but like night in and night out in the grind of January, February, getting into March, I think that Mark Mitchell's that guy you could be looking at as a Kentucky fan, being like, man, he's scored 22 or more points in 5 of his last 6 games, and he just went for 31. And like, we played like crap Ole Miss, but you know what? Mark Mitchell scored 31, and we just found a way to win it at the end, or like different things like that are what I think this clip starts to show you. And obviously, as you dive deeper into the film, but what I liked about this too, and something that I always try to do when we're breaking down film, is get some clips that are going to translate exactly what you're going to see at Kentucky. Like it's great to show him making a step back 3, and that's exciting, but like that's not what you're going to see in a Kentucky uniform. It's not going to be what translates to Coach Pope's offense. I could see Kentucky running an action like this next year. It's essentially just kind of flash Mark Mitchell up the lane line, get him a catch around the top of the key, then they're into a staggered double away. It could easily be Milan Momcilovic coming off of this double here, looking for a 3. Arkansas covers it up. So what does Mark Mitchell do, especially because Trayvon Brazile is out there defending him aggressively? He just puts his head down and drives it and dunks it on the dude. And one of the things I really like about this clip too is that it showcases the decisions that opposing defenses have to make against Mark Mitchell. Obviously, he's not a prolific 3-point shooter. He shot 38.8% from 3 last year, made 19, but like that's not going to be part of his game. Kentucky's not going to be scheming up ways for Mark Mitchell to shoot 3-point shots. So you would think like, oh, well, like how's this going to impact Kentucky's spacing? Are people going to have to respect him on the perimeter? Well, you can see right here, and obviously this is just one clip in one situation, but Trayvon Brazile is out there kind of pressuring the crap out of him as if he's a 40% 3-point shooter. And I think part of the reason that some teams feel like they have to do that is because of his passing ability. If you just kind of sag off of him and let him have free reign and be comfortable, that's where he's going to really start to pick you apart as a passer. Like you could curl that staggered double and he's going to hit you. Somebody could slip it from one of the screens and he's going to have open passing angles and open vision to kind of pick you apart. So I think that's going to be a way that he emulates the spacing that shooting brings to the table with some of his passing ability. Then also just the fact that if you sag off of him, and I think I have a clip of this later, where that also sort of just gives him that runway to get downhill. There's something to be said sometimes, especially at the college level, and especially with 6'9" forwards that have some strength to them, and they can really kind of get their momentum started. It's like, I don't want to just give up a straight line drive, but also if I'm 3 steps off of them, that gives them 1 or 2 dribbles to get their head of steam going downhill. And Mark Mitchell is so good at doing what you see here, just turning the corner. He's efficient, only taking 2 dribbles. And this is to his offhand also. Like Mark Mitchell plays basketball left-handed, and you're going to see in a lot of these clips, and I'm going to have some stats I'm going to bring up later as well. Like he goes right as well, if not better, than he goes left. And he scores it with his right a lot. He drives it to his right a lot. And this makes it really, really hard to guard him. So I think that this clip showcases, A, something you could see at Kentucky, but then B, it just really kind of encapsulates what sort of a go-to scorer he can be for Kentucky.
Yeah, and you kind of took the point, and I'll just, I guess, hammer it home, but you talked about the 3-point shooting. Yes, 38.8% last year from 3. But he's pretty much been a 1.5 3-point attempt per game guy his entire career, every single stop. His first year at Duke, he shot 35% on those. But then second year at Duke, down to 27.5%. First year at Missouri, 26%. So I'll be honest with you, I'm not entirely sure how much stock I can put into any of those numbers. I don't know about you, Brandon, because the track record just seems way too up and down there to really trust he's shooting 40 to 53s pretty much every season, and he's making like a pretty wide, like for anywhere from 38% to 26% throughout the course of his career. So it's kind of hard to use that as a sample size. But to your point of like why you still have to be up on him like that, that's something you'll notice on the film is he's quick. He's really quick for 6'9". Like he's going to be able to get around guys. He's really, really good at drawing fouls. Like that's something we can kind of emphasize as well. Like one of the best in the country. Actually, I think I had a number down here where he was, well, now I can't find it right now, but Yeah, one of the better 90. Okay, no, yeah, 99th percentile in free throw attempts per game last season at 8.1 among all forwards. So a guy that's really good, really good at getting the line, uses that physicality. There's literally a video on YouTube. It's just called Mark Mitchell, like elbow or shoulder scores or something like that, where it's literally just like 90 seconds of him just putting his shoulder into somebody else and like bullying his way to the rim for buckets. So yes, he's not a massive 3-point shooting threat, but the playmaking skills, he did have good passing numbers. Some of that was maybe a high usage, being kind of like the main guy at Missouri. So I'm interested to see how some of that will translate, not having the ball in his hands as often. He still might, honestly, but yeah, the play, like he's a good enough passer, and he's really quick off the dribble, off the bounce there, that you kind of have to eke out on him a little bit farther, which will open up passing lanes. And you can see that probably working well in Kentucky's offense there. Brandon, you got anything you want to add to that?
No, we can just keep it rolling into the next clip.
Gotcha. I think I want to say I had something else, but we'll go ahead and continue on here. So yes, we saw that play a handful of times. This is against Kentucky here in Lexington. So this is another one of Brandon clips as well. This is where I believe he rejects the screen, or no. I forget exactly what is happening here.
Scoring on the roll.
Just a nice, it gets off the pick and roll here. That's the one that you wanted to talk about. Gets off the pick and roll, gets himself some nice footwork, doesn't really lose the ball at all. Like it's a nice 1 pound dribble there, and then goes over Malachi for what is almost essentially a dunk there. So good play here, just like really quick on slipping the screen. It was a really nice job. Gets himself into space, and then he has the footwork to be able to not travel and put that one in the hole there. So Brandon, what did you like about this play here?
Yeah, so really the adding this clip to what I wanted to talk about, and it'll be juxtaposed a little bit with another clip that I have where he's coming off of the screen as a ball handler and actually hitting the roll man, is just to sort of talk about his versatility and to showcase, when you watch this clip and when you watch one that I have later, how many guys in college basketball, like how long is the list of guys that can do these following things? I tweeted out something similar earlier today with a few clips. Like, he can come off the screen and just get downhill and score it. He can come off the screen and pass it to the roll man, or he can be the screener and score it as the roll man. Like, there's just not that many guys that can be on both ends of the pick and roll conversation. And he's really good and really useful in both of those areas. Like he actually, this is unheard of really for a 6'9", 230-pound four-man, but he was used more as the pick and roll ball handler than the pick and roll man last season.
Yeah.
So like he really is a dude that's going to come off of these as the ball handler. Here you see him do it as the roll man. And I think this is important to kind of drive from the point, like, hey, let's remember this guy is an interior scorer at the end of the day. Yes, he's going to handle the ball a lot. Yes, he's going to generate a lot of his offense from the perimeter, but he's ultimately going to score it at the rim. And he is a guy that you can throw it to in the post. He has really good post moves, excellent footwork around the basket and in the paint, as you see here. And he goes up and plays really strong. He's not a guy, like, he's not some Herculean looking guy. He's not, chiseled out of granite. He doesn't look like a professional bodybuilder necessarily. He kind of has some length and kind of longer arms to him, but he plays strong. And like you said here, when he goes up with two hands, just kind of finishes this in Malachi Moreno's face. And it's because he's a fourth-year senior at that point, going up against an 18-year-old. Like that was a physicality and a I'm older than you battle, I think, but between two SEC big men. And that's a battle, especially now in a hopeful fifth year, that Mark Mitchell is going to continue to finish even more. He's very efficient around the rim. He's very efficient on the roll. And I just think that this showcases how many creative ways and how many different ways that he's going to be able to score the ball. And I think that somebody that has the offensive mind of Coach Pope, you're just going to have a ton of fun being able to toggle around all of the different spots you can put him in, all the different roles you can use him in as a scorer, as a facilitator in your offense. Really, the options seem to be limitless when it comes to what you can ask Mark Mitchell to do offensively.
Yeah, and points in the paint that's the name of his game. Like, I got it marked down here. Over 81% of his points last season came in the paint, either at the rim or in the paint. Like that's insane. If 10.5 points per game in the paint last season, that ranked him in the 98th percentile among all forwards. Again, he really loves to get to the free throw line. So like he's not someone that's gonna take many of these mid-range jumpers or try and get himself into like pull-up spots like you kind of mentioned Ortega earlier. Like Ortega was big on trying to do the pull-up, 20 footers or whatever, 18 footers, whatever it was. Those are not really in Mark Mitchell's shot diet, or at least they haven't been. Like if you look at his heat map, it's just one giant chunk right in the paint and then like a few spots spread around to the perimeter. That's kind of what you want out of a guy like him. So and yeah, you mentioned like a lot of isolation scoring with him. And and Brandon, I'm very interested to know your answer, like how you view this. Like, obviously, I think part of that was just the system at Missouri, is he was just their best player, and part of the game was just give him the ball. Like, 37.8% of his makes last season were unassisted. That was in the 4th percentile. So he was in the 99th percentile in unassisted points among all forwards last season. So like pretty much he generated a ton of offense by himself. He was kind of the guy, like, and that's just probably not going to be the case at Kentucky. Like Mark Pope's going to want to move the ball around more. He's going to want to get more guys activated. He's probably not going to. I mean, I think we'll still see some Mark Mitchell like bully his way into the post and just try and be bigger. And I've got some clips that I'll throw those up right now, Brandon, while I let you talk, because I believe those are the next ones here. But yeah, so I'll let these two plays go here. So he gets the offensive rebound. This is in the SEC tournament. Goes against Mo Diabate. Just bullies his way. Patient, easy left-handed hook right there. That's an easy one. Then you're going to see some plays like this as well. And this one does go in, but I can already see the Big Blue Nation just getting frustrated at these type of shots because a lot of them aren't going to go in. But he gets him in an isolation spot up here. Yelovich has to be up just enough because he respects his ability to drive and get around him and everything. And just takes an ugly, ugly shot that just happens to bank right in. Like, he's going to make a lot of those shots as well. But this was like kind of his shot diet last year at Missouri, was just like try and get yourself in opportune positions and then just try and go make a bucket. So Brandon, how do you kind of see this type of stuff like in these two plays? How do you see all that translating to Kentucky next season at Mark Pope, where he's going to try and move the ball around more? Like this play is not going to be as common. Like Mark Mitchell is not going to be in the 99th percentile of unassisted baskets next season at Kentucky. I can almost promise you that.
Yeah, I think that the answer to your question is going to probably have a lot to do with, does Kentucky get upset in the round of 32, or does Kentucky make a run to the Final Four? Like, because you have some of these similar questions about some other guys on the team. Like we believe, and I believe that, for example, Zoom Diallo and Alex Wilkins are going to make each other better in the backcourt. Like when you look at their catch and shoot numbers, something that we've talked about ad nauseum in their own Zoom action breakdowns. Like, I think they're going to get more of those open catch and shoot shots for one another because they're each individually such dynamic playmakers. They're going to take some of the onus off of one another and give each other more opportunities to succeed, as opposed to kind of cannibalizing each other's statistics or ability to handle the ball. Now you add in a third guy who is a ball dominant isolation scorer. I would like to think that some of those shots that, yeah, they go in, but they're not great shots. They're kind of forced. They're kind of in a scrum of 6 feet and 3 guys all kind of, packed in there. Like, I would hope that at Kentucky you would need and be asked to take less of those, because maybe there's going to be a better shooter to kick it out to. And I somewhat jokingly said on Twitter yesterday, like, T.O. Barrett and Anthony Robinson make Zoom Diallo and Alex Wilkins look like prime Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. Like, T.O. Barrett's one of the worst shooters in college basketball for a guard. Anthony Robinson, I think, made like 30-something threes at like 31%. Like, we talk about Alex Wilkins being a questionable shooter, and the dude made 65 freaking threes last year. Like, I get it. It wasn't super high percentage and was at Furman, all these things. Like, dude made a bunch of threes. If he makes 65 threes this year, I'm honestly not overly concerned about what the percentage is going to be. Zoom Diallo made a leap as well. So I think that in terms of the shot diet, if you're buying into this Kentucky team, if you're buying into what Coach Pope does for people on the offensive end, then I think that you're buying into the fact that you're going to see a lot of these guys limit their less efficient shots, and they're going to see an increase in their more efficient shots. So maybe every single one of those guys that I just mentioned, Zoom Diallo, Alex Wilkins, Mark Mitchell, I probably wouldn't bet on any one of them averaging as many points as they did last season at their previous stop. I don't think Mark Mitchell's going to average 18.3 points a game. I don't think Alex Wilkins is going to average 16 and a half. I don't think Zoom Diallo is going to average 15.7, but I think all of them could become more efficient, and I think all of them could be better players than they were last year. And that's not just because they get older. I think it's because they all get to play with each other, and because they get to play for a really smart offensive coach in Mark Pope. So while some people worry about their fit with each other, and like, is there going to be enough floor spacing? There's only one basketball, and you got three guys that like to dribble it. It's like, I also see three guys that really like to pass it. I see three guys that want to play with other really good players, and probably were, in terms of efficiency or in terms of scoring, were sometimes a victim of not having other people around them. So I'm really excited to see all three of these guys together. And to me, you're going to see all of them, and including Mark Mitchell, just become even more efficient, giving more space, given better talent around him, and I'm really excited to see it.
Yeah, and there was the play here where he scores against Yelovich. There's one against Diabate earlier, or another point in this game where he misses like a similar shot like this. But let's just kind of look at what's going on around him, like when he gets these balls, like just two guys kind of standing at the top there, not really moving around. Like, the guy on the bottom is kind of moving, but not really doing anything. Like Malachi is still right there. That was just kind of the predetermined offense. It felt like it's okay. Mark Mitchell is in his spot. Let's just let him work. Like, you'd have to think that you've got Milan Momcilovic screaming up and down this perimeter here, like maybe trying to get off a screen or something like that. And then in the second clip against Yelovich, like, this is something that Mark Mitchell might just have to learn, and just over time it'll get better at. But when he gets the ball here, it's kind of the same thing. Everyone kind of stands around, and then number 17 at the bottom here leaks out at the last second. Like, that's where, when you're Mark Mitchell, you gotta be able to try and hit this guy. Like, maybe Malachi can turn around, and I mean, obviously Mark Mitchell makes this shot, but look at, he's surrounded by three guys here. Like, if this is Milan Momcilovic out here in the spot, like, you got to be able to pass it to this guy. You got to be able to hit this cutter right here. So I think that's the thing. That's just having more talent around him should, I would think that's something that Mark Pope will hammer home to him, is like, okay, if you get into these spots, Mark Pope is very much a big, like, playoff 2 feet guy. I don't even know if he'd like a shot like this from Mark Mitchell, where you just kind of get yourself in a bad spot here. But like, there's opportunities here to pass out of this and put yourself in a better spot. So I'm interested to see if that's, how long does it take him to kind of adapt and do that? How long does it take him to figure out that this is probably not a good shot, that he's got better guys around him? So that's something that, go for it.
One thing I want to address to that point too, as you're talking about it, I'm kind of looking as I think that, yes, absolutely, at Kentucky, I think he's going to have opportunities to pass it to better players. Like, I probably, if I'm Dennis Gates, I probably want him taking this shot as opposed to throwing it out to T.O. Barrett, because T.O. Barrett's not going to even look at the rim. But like, maybe you can hit the cutter here, great. But I also do think that there's something to be said, and as a coach, this is a balancing act of kind of how you want to handle this, because you also don't want to take away his aggressiveness. Like, we talked about this with Otega Owe at times, like the last couple of seasons. Like, there's some shots that aren't great. There's some that make you want to pull your hair out. Sometimes they go in. Sometimes they're essentially turnovers. But then if you start to kind of audit every shot at the end of the day a little bit, then maybe he turns down some of his aggressiveness, and some of those go-to scoring moments, like I've highlighted, maybe they start to not happen. Or, like, also, this is how you get to be a really high free throw rate guy. Like, you drive into somebody's chest and you get the ball up in the rim. And especially that previous one where, and I know we're talking a little bit more about this one, but like that previous one over Mo Diabate, like, he's got 3.5, 4 inches on Mo Diabate. Like, I want him to shoot this over his right shoulder every single time. That's a great shot over an undersized opponent.
I love that shot.
The one into Yelovich's chest, maybe you could take it or leave it. And maybe if this was Alex Wilkins instead of T.O. Barrett on the wing, maybe he does deliver the ball to him. But I also think that, over the course of time, if he still makes half of those shots, and then, on half of the other ones, he still gets fouled. Like, I don't necessarily want to immediately take away some of that aggressiveness that makes him a top 10 scorer in the SEC.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, especially the foul drawing stuff. Like you want him to be a guy that can put the pressure on the defense on the rim there. So I understand all that. And he did average 1.2 and ones per game last season. Like he's actually really, really, really good at drawing shooting fouls. And that's something that's baked into that shot against Yelovich right there. Is like, maybe when it comes off, it looks funky, but there's a reason there. He's trying to draw a foul a little bit as well. That's a big part of the game right now is trying to create some contact on your own. So I just think there's a fine line between that
No
shot
doubt.
with against Mo Diabate where it's an easy one, you're 1-on-1, you've got the space, go for it, versus a shot like this where maybe if you cut down these type of shots by 20%, you can keep the same aggressiveness, but make it so where you're not turning down a wide open Milan Momcilovic three because Mark Mitchell has to get off this contested floater in the lane.
Right.
So I'm not saying I don't want him to get into the lane and take all these shots because that's where he's at his best. But like he was good, not great at like with his efficiency on shots in the paint, and it was pretty decent around the we talked a lot about finishing layups last year. He's 59.7% on layups. That was 60th percentile, so that's above average at least. Pretty like above average efficiency on all his shots in the paint as well. So I don't know. Like there's some give and take with that, and there's a reason that like this guy has played this long and was a two-time All SEC, but still didn't get drafted. Like there's still some reasons why his game is probably still some holes in his game that he has to work with. But I just think you're probably going to see a little bit. You'll still see this type of shot here, but maybe a little bit less of the second shot at Kentucky, or at least I would like to. I'd like to see him being able to like hit guys for wide open threes here, which I think will happen because guys are going to collapse on him here, or either they collapse and he leaves a guy open for three, or they don't collapse, and then this shot is not going to be as difficult as maybe as it looks right now. So
Right.
That's a fun little conversation to have on that. So let's go ahead and dive right into the next play here, Brandon. I don't know if this is the one that you have juxtaposed against that.
Yes.
First
Yeah.
one
This is going to be Mark
It is.
Mitchell hitting the guy on the roll here.
Yes, this is when he is the pick and roll ball handler here, and this is a nifty pass from what I remember as well.
Yes.
Yeah, so gets himself into the pick and roll spot here, draws three guys, like draws both the guys on the ball screen and the guy that's nearest to him. A nice little like overhanded pass here. I'll let it play a little bit so you can see it smoother. A nice over the head pass here to hit his big for an easy dunk. Again, Brandon, everything you were saying about pick and roll ball handling and all this stuff, like he can do a bunch of different things out of this spot here. So just go ahead and tell us a little bit about what you liked from these type of plays.
It's just such an impressive read and takes so much patience, poise, athleticism to make this play. And there's a heck of a lot of guards across college basketball that probably wouldn't be able to deliver this pass on the money to a rolling five-man for a dunk. And again, Mark Mitchell's a 6'9", 230-pound forward making this play. He comes off the ball screen, gets the switch. He sees that and immediately gets back going downhill to his left hand, and then really right at the elbow there. Like you said, the three guys collapse on him. He has the defender that switched onto him, but then also his original defender who then switched onto the five-man. He kind of immediately steps up and just sort of meets him there at the elbow. Another guy's stepping in from the wing, and even while he's doing that, he's able to read that backside defender. You have Tyler Nickel down here in black around the corner. Like if he dives in and tags the roll, then I think Mitchell's prepared. And I've seen him on film going through all these synergy clips. Like he can whip that thing across the floor to the corner for a three. He just makes the right read here, like he's a point guard, and hits the roll man because the tag's not there. And that's just like again, when you go back to the previous clip we talked about, and you're watching him finish on the roll over one of the better shot blockers in the SEC in Malachi Moreno, and then now you're watching him hit the roll man like a point guard would. It's just so fun to envision the different ways that he can be utilized in an offense. And I think too, even going back to your last point, Zach, I think that this is an important showcase that I think Mark Mitchell does have some of that kind of decision making to him of what's a good shot and what's a bad shot. And here he never got a piece of the paint on this drive. Like they converged on him early. They kept him out of the paint. So this would have been even a much lower percentage shot than that last one. The one where he drives
Yeah,
into Yelovich's chest, like at least he's got 2 feet in the paint and he's at the SEC logo. Yeah, I'm not trying to argue it's a high percentage shot, but like I think that
he
he
still made
maybe
it.
understands the difference between that one and this one, and,
Yes.
and I'm glad to see that this one turns into a pass and a dunk for a teammate. And again, it's just that versatility that you're getting. I mean, this is a guy that averaged 3.6 assists last season. He was, I think, a 21.2% assist rate according to Ken Pom. So these are big time numbers, not just for a forward, but really anybody that has the ball in their hands, especially when you consider he did that while still being one of the top scorers in the SEC as well. So it's gonna be really fun to see how all he gets utilized by Coach Pope and Kentucky's offense.
Yeah. So like, and on the clip against Yelovich, that's kind of a predetermined one a little bit more. Like he kind of thinks he's going to
Right.
score here. With this one, it's a called play here to try and get him into a pick and roll. This is like the blob play that they run here. So maybe a little bit more in that mindset, maybe when he's thinking a little bit more about it. Do you think you'll see, I know he was a high pick and roll guy at Missouri as the ball handler. Do you think that will translate to Kentucky as well? Or how do you kind of seeing Mark Pope use him in that way?
I would have to imagine he would be utilized some, and obviously at Kentucky with some of the things that Coach Pope likes to run. Like, could some of those ball screens turn into him coming off the handoff and zoom action? Yeah, that could happen. And in the grand scheme of things, that's a relatively similar spot to be in. Like whether he's coming off the down screen into the handoff and turning the corner on that, or dribbling into a ball screen, ultimately like the reads, the decision making are very similar. So looking at his synergy profile last year, he essentially was never used coming off of a handoff, and he was in the 25th percentile as a pick and roll ball handler. I think that like that number could come down and his handoff number could probably go way up, just knowing how Coach Pope likes to run some things. But absolutely, I think it would be, quite frankly, it would be a waste of having Mark Mitchell, I think, if you didn't find some ways to utilize him to trigger offense, to put opposing forwards in uncomfortable situations, running off of screening actions. These are his strengths. This is what he brings to the table. And I would have to imagine that even if it means tinkering with a lot of things now in late August, that a bunch of things that weren't in the playbook 48 hours ago, I think are probably being put into the playbook sort of at rapid speed as we watch this film, because Coach Pope and the staff have been doing the exact same thing as we've been doing over the last 48 hours and figuring out how they want to utilize him in their offense.
Well, like on this play here, you can see number 15 for Missouri being Malachi Moreno. You can see this kind of play happening. And I imagine you're going to see a decent amount of Mark Mitchell as the ball handler, Mila Momcilovic as the screener. Maybe a little bit vice versa, but I think you could see a decent amount of that where.
Yeah. I mean, how are you going to guard that pick and pop? Or like when Momcilovic starts running out, he's getting ahead of steam and he ghosts it into a pop.
He's
like
a good cutter.
It's just going to be, I mean, like that's going to be so hard for a defense to either stay with Momcilovic and take him away from three and keep Mark Mitchell from being able to get downhill, whichever opportunity presents itself on that given possession. Yeah, there's going to be so many kind of unique things and inverted things that you can do offensively. I mean, you can have Alex Wilkins doing the same thing as Momcilovic. Yeah. Like he can run into some screening action and ghost it out to a pop or whatever it may be, because you just have enough versatility, enough playmaking with all these different guys on Kentucky's offense.
And with the handoffs, it feels like that should be something, like you said, you could see that going up more. It just feels like that will be something that they use more, to try and maybe free up some guys, like get some easy threes from Milan where he's just like a foot or two behind the line. But also like Mark Mitchell is like, he's got really good with that first step. Like while a lot of guys are focused on Milan coming around to screen to try and be the hand or receive the handoff, Mark Mitchell can slip real quick and go to the rim and score that way, or he can hit a guy that's cutting through. Like his hub as an offensive playmaker does seem like it could benefit from more handoffs and things like that. But I mean, the pick and roll is definitely feels like where that's what you said he ran the most at Missouri. So that's kind of what he's most comfortable with. So I'm sure we'll still see a bunch of that, but you can mix this up in multiple ways. Like you're saying, Malachi, Milan, Alex Wilkins, I'm trying to think of hell, you want to do like Cam Williams and get another shooter or something like that.
Jerome
I don't know
Morton.
I don't know if that'll be a big Zoom Diallo tag
Right.
team or not.
But probably almost everybody else. I mean, heck, Justin McBride could do this.
Yeah. So you've got different options there, and he is a talented. So the playmaking number is really boosted up, or the passing numbers are really boosted up as a senior at Missouri. Do you think, how much of that do you think is just high usage? He's the guy with the ball in his hands a lot versus the fact that he actually is like a legitimately, I mean, I think from the film you can see that he is a talented passer, but what was more of that just him having the ball in his hands, or do you think that there is is there a real skill there as a playmaker that you think all of that will still translate to Kentucky? If that makes sense. I might have phrased that.
No, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, the year prior, like they ran a lot more stuff with Anthony Robinson having the ball. Tony Perkins was on that team, a guy who transferred to Missouri from Iowa. Those guys just had the ball in their hands a lot more, and then it kind of became Mark Mitchell's offense his senior year. So I think, yes, some of that was a product of opportunity. Like you're gonna assist on more on more shots when you have the ball in your hands all the time. But there's enough things on film. I mean, that when you go through and just watch his assists from last season, like there are some passes, there are some reads that show you like, hey, this guy knows what he's doing. Like he's not just kind of like getting lucky and dumping it off to the 5-man for a dunk, or he's not just swinging it and a elite shooter makes a three. Like he's making reads off of the dribble. He can pass it with both hands as he drives it. I think that, again, sort of like the scoring numbers. I mean, is he going to average 3.6 assists next season at Kentucky? Probably not. But can he be a 2.5 to 3 assists per game guy and be that hub like we're talking about? Like I would be really interested in maybe going some small ball and like having him run the 5 when Malachi's out some, just so he can be that Amari Williams in Zoom action sort of piece. Because I've been vocal in these episodes over the last couple of years about how we could be doing this show 20 years from now and not have another passing big man like Amari Williams. And quite frankly, I think we might have already gotten one now in Mark Mitchell, who's actually more skilled with. I mean, some of the things that Mark Mitchell can do off of the dribble, Amari Williams couldn't do them. Amari might be kind of a flashier passer and like was able to hit the back.
Not a great dribbler.
Maybe that Mark Mitchell can't, but I would love to see him operate as the 5 or as the trigger in some of Kentucky's Zoom stuff. So yeah, again, it just comes back to all the different options that Coach Pope's going to have, not just with Mark Mitchell, but really with a lot of these pieces now as they start to fit together within this Kentucky offense.
Now let's go ahead and transition into our last play here. Brandon, this one is yours as well. I kind of forget exactly where we are. I think this is where he rejects as an isolation. Yeah, he rejects the screen here and then just goes into his bag, puts with the shot fake. Nice footwork up and under. I think that's twice now. Like the very first clip, or maybe the one against Moreno, he kind of did the same where he did a little up fake to kind of get his guy off balance there. And does similar stuff here. So yeah, like he's definitely a much better like ball handler than Amari is. So he can do things like this, compared to where Amari couldn't. Nice shot fake there. Like again, the defense is going to respect him just a little bit. This is against Missouri as well. So this is still a Power 5 conference here. And then just bullies his way in. Nice shot fake. Gets 2 guys. He gets Big Z to jump there a little bit as well. And then just is able to lay it right in. So, Brandon, we've kind of touched on all this stuff a little bit, but just kind of recapping this final play here. What did you like about it?
Yeah, it's something I talk about in my scouting reports. And, everybody always kind of gets a laugh when I go all caps, left-hand driver, right-hand driver, right shoulder, all these different things. And like the reason you do that, I mean, as a Division III coach, it was true, and it's true in the SEC as well. Like even at the highest levels, left-handed guys get like a bucket a half because they're left-handed, because defenders are stupid and people make mistakes. And what Mark Mitchell then brings to the table is not just is he left-handed, but he's actually really freaking good and really willing to drive it right. Actually, 63.2% of the time last season, Zach, he drove it right. And what makes that so hard is that as that very first clip we showed, he can just drive it right all the way and go dunk it. But then he
Mhm.
also loves, as you see here, he loves to spin back to that right shoulder, get to his left hand. This time they actually did a pretty good job of taking it away. So then he just drop steps back to his left shoulder and finishes it. So like his ability to drive it in both directions, how much he loves that spin move back to his right shoulder, but then maintains the footwork to stay on balance and drop step back again if he needs to and shot fake, all these things. Makes him such a good scorer inside. Again, this is sort of that go-to scorers mentality that I was talking about. It's clips like this where you can kind of just throw him the ball, get the heck out of the way, and let him go make a play, especially against what might be a tough matchup or whatever it is for somebody to guard him out on the perimeter and then have to guard him in the paint as well. That's one of the things that makes him such a unique matchup is that you have to have a defender that can do both. Like you have to be able to move your feet well enough on the perimeter so he doesn't just beat you in a straight line, but then you have to be big enough at the end of the drive that you can wall up against him and make it hard for him to score at the rim. So yeah, the clips like this are why he averaged 18.3 points per game last year. Clips like this are why I think he's going to be Kentucky's leading scorer if he does ultimately get to play in the games. And it's why I've spent the last 48 hours watching even more of this film than I thought I would, just because it's been genuinely fun to watch the different ways that this guy can score the basketball.
Yeah, I mean, and he's played a lot of college basketball too. Like he knows what he's doing at this point. He's got 134 games played, 133 starts at Duke and Missouri. He's been to the NCAA tournament multiple times. I think they won the ACC tournament when he was either a freshman or a sophomore, and he was playing 27 plus minutes for them as well, or maybe the ACC regulars. I forget what he's won before. And I know John Shire, there was a quote I found where he said that they run a lot of, I think it was his second year at Duke, they ran a lot of their offense through Mark Mitchell. Like that was something that John Shire was very open about. So, but Brandon, I guess I don't even know. We'll go into the discussion part here and we'll just kind of touch on some few different things. But why are his rebounding numbers lower than you'd expect for a 6'9", 230-pound forward? Is some of it, you think, just the offensive responsibility that he had, that he was doing a lot of the scoring, so maybe he's maybe he wants to try and leak out more, so maybe he's not getting more defensive rebounds? Like he wasn't really good, or at least numbers wise, the efficiency in terms of offensive and rebound or defensive rebounding rates, the numbers were pretty low for a guy his size. You'd think they would be higher. What do you make of that? Anything at all? Do you think those numbers will tick up? Was some of it a product of the system? I know Missouri did a decent amount of zone last year as well, so maybe that played into a reason why he couldn't get as many rebounds. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's interesting, and it is something I think that certainly remains a concern for me. I think that if this team on paper has one relatively glaring weakness going into 26-27, it would be defensive rebounding specifically. Like even more than big picture defensive rebounding is probably my biggest concern for this team. It's why, admittedly, like in the 1A, 1B battle between Jackson Kohler and Mark Mitchell, I probably did lean Jackson Kohler because I felt like he solved some of the rebounding problems a little bit more than what Mark Mitchell would. Now, when you dive into his rebounding, first and foremost, he did still lead Missouri in rebounding last season.
Yeah,
it was by a very
5.2.
yeah, with I think two guys at 5.1. But it is, even for a forward, he's not a bad rebounder. He's just very average as a rebounder, and I think there's a couple of things for that. One, yes, he has a ton on his plate offensively, and that generally just means that on the defensive end, things
kind of like Geoghegan last year
slide a little bit. Yeah, like you're not going to be as active. You're not going to be as good of a rebounder. I also think that, especially looking back some of his Duke numbers, like the fact that he's so involved on the offensive side of things, it's limited him as an offensive rebounder a little bit. Like his sophomore year at Duke, he was a very good offensive rebounder, and those numbers have not been there the last 2 years at Missouri. So I think that if he has more chances to use his length and athleticism crashing the glass as opposed to being the one that's always shooting the ball, I think you could see his offensive rebounding numbers tick up a little bit too. And then on the defensive side of things, some of that also was like Missouri played him with a couple other really big guys at times last year. Like Sean Phillips was 7 foot, Trip Burns was like freaking 7'5", and like he would play the three almost sometimes. Like there were times where Mark Mitchell was playing with two other 7-footers or two other really big guys. The Jaden Stone or whatever his name is, he's a really good rebounding guard as well. So there was also just sort of some rebounding by committee at Missouri that I think was part of the culture and just sort of part of the expectation. Whereas, and honestly, like if that's the case at Kentucky, like you can be a good rebounding team and not have somebody average in double figures. Now, Missouri wasn't a good rebounding team, so maybe Mark Mitchell was part of the problem, and I think we'll kind of be able to figure that out more so this this coming season. But yeah, he's going to have to be a decent rebounder, or else the concerns that I have are going to come to fruition, because at that point you're just going to put so much of the onus on Malachi Moreno and then Big Frank backing him up to do all of the rebounding. I mean, I think that some of the guards, because they're a little bit bigger, because they're athletic, like you could have Zoom Diallo be a really good rebounder from the perimeter, but usually like that's not, unless you have like Rajon Rondo, that's not a good plan. Is like, well, the way we're going to rebound is have our guards be really good rebounders. If that's your plan, you're kind of saying the quiet part out loud of, hey, we stink rebounding basketball. So do I think he can be a better rebounder than he showed during his couple years at Missouri? Yes. Do I think there's even some things about it that he's a better rebounder than maybe some of the numbers show? Probably there's some truth to that even as well. But are we going to look at it all of a sudden he's averaging 7.5 rebounds this year? No, I don't see that happening. It's going to continue to be a concern. And it's going to be one of probably his weaknesses is, we're going to wish that he was a better rebounder, but if he can also go out and get us 20, I'll give him a little bit more slack.
Yeah, rebounding is still my biggest issue, and Brandon and I have not talked about that, or at least before this. So that was from our own different perspectives, still kind of concerning about the rebounding. I just think that, and I would have been totally fine if Kentucky got Jackson Kohler for what you just said, like much better rebounder. That's a double guy. Does kind of like, he stretches the floor a little bit more. He's kind of still the like big interior paint scoring guy, just a little bit like different ways of how he gets it than Mark Mitchell. But I prefer Mark Mitchell, but just because of overall talent. So I'm kind of willing to sacrifice some of the defensive rebounding numbers. But I do think it was a little bit of what happened with Ortega last year, where, we got on Ortega a lot for like kind of falling asleep on defense and things like that. And I think part of it was just the guy had just so much on his shoulders offensively.
Right.
I don't think Mark Mitchell is going to have the same load that he had offensively at Missouri that he's going to have this season at Kentucky. So maybe that gets him an extra rebound a game or something like that. I mean, if I'm Mark Pope, I'm telling Mark Mitchell to go grab as many defensive rebounds as you can, so you can kickstart the fast break. Like, go grab the ball off the rim and let's just run, baby. Like, Milan's already going to be down there waiting at the 3-point line because he's not going to rebound. We already know that. So he's like, just go ahead and grab as many defensive rebounds as you can, scoop them up and go. So I do think that, like, I think he can get up to that 6 rebound per game number that he was a sophomore at Duke, maybe even higher. Like you said, 7.5. You don't see. I mean, that would be awesome, I guess. I mean, maybe that would be a hard number to hit. I just think that Malachi is going to have a lot of responsibility in terms of defensive rebounding next season. That I'm still, that's one of my worries in terms of the overall rebounding, is it's going to put a lot on Malachi's plate on both ends of the floor. And I'm just very interested to see how he's able to handle all that in terms of just, can the conditioning level, can he keep up with that? Can he do so much to where he still is, being a good part of the offense? But the rebounding it is just kind of odd that, that they have two, like they have a 6'8" and a 6'9" guy, Kentucky does, and neither, like, you combine them and they didn't average 10 rebounds a game last season, despite playing 30 minutes a game. Like, that is a little odd, and probably a little bit concerning still, even look at it now. But I think you can take all the other trade-offs of, like, Mark Mitchell's just going to do things offensively that Jackson Kohler couldn't.
Right.
So I'm
those two guys you just mentioned, they also combined to score 35 points a game.
Yeah, and, exactly. Yes.
Yeah,
you take the trade.
I know. This offseason, I've said it halfway tongue in cheek, and it's probably mean, heck, at this point, it probably becomes less tongue in cheek every day. Like, if Milan Momcilovic and Mark Mitchell score, 35 points a game for us combined, I don't care if they get a single rebound. Like,
Yeah.
I'll take my chances with the rest of it. Like, look, I am in for a season of let's go score 90 and see what happens. And hey, I get what comes with that. I understand that's a good way to get yourself upset in the first round. Like it just is. And it's a good way to have a couple games throughout the season where we're just like, man, I don't know if this team has it. They're so bad defensively. We just watched so-and-so from South Carolina score 27 points at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday night, and we're all ripping our hair out. But it's also a way where you can put a bunch of people away. You can blow some people out. And then in the NCAA tournament, you just put so much pressure on other teams to be great offensively as well. Like that's one of the ways that offense can lead to defense is that when the other team is scoring 90 points, you feel like you have to be perfect on your end. And, if you can just find some stops, create a turnover or two, don't just get, demolished on the glass. I really do think that this Kentucky team has an offensive ceiling to be elite enough offensively where they just have to be okay defensively. And really almost all of the goals that we all have for this team, SEC championship, SEC tournament championship, Final Fours, national championship banners, I think that you can be in the formula of doing those things with a top 5 offense as long as they don't just like genuinely stink defensively. And I think there's enough length and athleticism to go around that I'll be surprised if they legitimately stink defensively.
Yeah, the length and athleticism is exactly what I was going to say. Is I think they'll have enough there. I mean, just the size positionally, like that's something we've talked about. Zoom is 6'5" or whatever you want to say he actually is. That's what he's listed as. Alex is tall. Milan, like all these guys come off the bench. Cam Williams, Braden Hawthorne, Justin McBride, Njai, like these guys are all 6'8" or taller. Like I think they'll just be good enough. And like you said, the offense is, as long as they're putting up 90 points, it should counteract some of the defensive issues that are definitely going to be there. Because I don't think this is going to be a great defensive team at all. We don't have to talk about Mark Mitchell's defense really, because you're not going to find any clips of it on his YouTube highlight page of his defense. He's not a big like havoc guy. He's not going to create a bunch of steals or generate blocks or anything like that. I will say that Missouri was a bad defensive team last year, but they were better defensively when Mark Mitchell was on the floor compared to him not. So, and again, they did run a decent amount of zone, so you can kind of form your own opinion on that of what you will. But all right, let's do a couple more things here, Brandon, then we'll get out of here. So, just how high do you think this raises Kentucky's ceiling? Like, where do you think Kentucky kind of capped at before this edition, and where do you think they cap at now? Like, do you think this is a team that now can legitimately make a Final Four run, and how does Mark Mitchell play a factor in that?
Yeah, so before the addition of Mark Mitchell, I was probably floating Kentucky anywhere in like that 12 to 15 range nationally. I now have them, in my opinion, I think that anything like 7 through 12 is pretty fair.
Probably where I am too.
Honestly, like and everybody's gonna love to hear this, but probably my biggest kind of toggle right now in the rankings is Kentucky or Louisville for 7th and 8th in the country. Like there's 6 teams that I think are still on paper better, or maybe not even better, but it's like that I feel better about going into the season than Kentucky. There's 6 teams I'm going to have ranked ahead of Kentucky. And then I think starting at 7, you can have Kentucky there. And then there's some other teams, with like Louisville, Michigan, even Texas, I think is in that next group that I have of like, you can put us anywhere 7 through 12. And like I always say, usually there's not that much of a difference between those things. Right. It doesn't really matter. It's somewhat arbitrary. I'm not going to get bent out of shape if somebody has us ranked 11th and I think we're 8th. It's the same thing. So, but yeah, I do think that this takes Kentucky from that 12 to 15 range to that 7 to 12 range, which does obviously, I think, move you up probably a tier, if you want to call it, and it makes you a very legitimate Final Four contender for this season. I'm never going to be one that says you need to make a Final Four. You have to make a Final Four. You even should make a Final Four. And I don't think this team, elevates to that level yet, especially because I think that there's still real concerns on the defensive end of the floor. We've talked about the defensive rebounding, even the depth. Like, I'm not completely sold on. There's some things that, like, I'm
not going to sit here and declare this team to be a great 3-point shooting team either.
Right.
As well. Like, I kind of got tricked into that last offseason, so I'm not going to do that.
I think that's very fair.
I'm not going to project all these guys to shoot better,
Yeah, there are some concerns still to point to. And, I think that a lot of times, and this is just human nature, something that was really hitting me today when I was going through some of the rosters and kind of preparing for this discussion a little bit, was, like, we get really excited about our players because that's who we spend time talking about. Like, we just gushed about Mark Mitchell for an hour. We've gushed about almost every player that we've picked up now for an hour on different episodes of Zoom Action. Like, well, guess what Louisville fans are doing? Guess what Tennessee fans are doing? Guess what, Alabama, I need to stop naming SEC teams, like Illinois fans, like that, like they're all super excited about their guys. It doesn't mean like, well, they're just idiots and we actually know ball. It's like, no, like we just don't know their players well enough to sit there and get excited about them, and we don't care enough to get excited about them. So, like, every team this time of year has, some.
Texas Tech is loading up on guys too right now.
Yeah, so like I'm not going to sit here and act like well, we're the only ones with a really good transfer class, or we have all this better talent than everybody else. Like, I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think Kentucky's now put themselves in a position where they can compete with anybody. And one last thing, and then I'll hang up and listen for a couple minutes, is to compare this to last year. I said it all off season. I was going to ultimately really grade this team in the offseason on who were your three best players, because I felt like that immediately, and you can go back, I have receipts from last year. From day one, I didn't think that our best player or our best players were good enough for Kentucky to be Kentucky good. Now you have the best player from last year's Iowa, or the leading scorer from last year's Iowa State team, second team, second team All Big 12 guy. That's immediately an upgrade, in my opinion, in terms of your, a best player. Same thing with Mark Mitchell. Like, I think now that you have two guys on this team who I would rather have than Otega Owe, quite frankly. Like, I think that Milan Momcilovic and Mark Mitchell are better college basketball players than Otega Owe. So that's an upgrade. I think that I think that Zoom Diallo and Alex Wilkins, that is an upgrade of your backcourt over Denzel Aberdeen and Colin Chandler. It just is. I feel very confident about that.
Yeah.
And then now, and I'm probably about as low on the spectrum of expectations for Malachi Moreno as you can be. Like, that is one of my concerns for this season. Is I think we're putting a lot of stock in Malachi being really good, and like, I don't know if he's going to be really good. So, but still, I'm going to assume that sophomore Malachi Moreno is better than freshman Malachi Moreno. So, it's very easy to go guy for guy now and be like, hey, this team's a lot better than last year. Now, you could also say, well, gosh, Brandon, I would sure as heck hope so. Last year's team stunk. And like, okay, fine. Yeah, I get it. But, I think that it is very clear this is an upgrade of talent, especially on the top end of things. Like, I think now when you look at this starting five and maybe even going like 6 or 7 deep, you start to feel like, man, like this looks like a roster that you could see playing in Detroit come late March, early April.
Well, and Mark Mitchell's also not coming off a torn ACL and isn't going to start playing basketball in December. Like they're, as long as Zoom Diallo,
we also might just need more lawsuits to even be able to play. But
that is true. Yeah, we're gonna talk about that in a second. Well, actually, here, I got a few more things actually I want to talk about. So, just give me a one-word answer, and if you really want to dive into it more, you can. Is Mark Mitchell Kentucky's best player?
Yes.
Yes. So I think you got him, Milan. Those are two all SEC level guys. Malachi, I think Malachi is definitely going to be better next year because everything that we've seen from him over the last 3 years implies that he's going to be a better player. And maybe I'm just overthinking it or thinking about it too hard, but I just think he's going to have so much on his plate next year in terms of rebounding and defense that I'm worried how much, like, are the numbers going to shoot up a bunch? I'm not entirely sure, actually, if the numbers are going to shoot up a bunch. Like, what did he average, like 9 and 7 or something last year? Maybe a couple blocks. Like, I could see the defensive numbers looking better, but I'm just, I don't know. I mean, you can't shoot much worse than whatever it was, 43% on layups. So as long as she does better than that, like he should be a better overall player. But I don't know if the numbers will necessarily reflect like a significantly improved player. And I don't think that's necessarily going to be his fault. I just think he's going to have a lot on his plate. I don't know if you agree with that or not. We don't have to spend too much time on that because that's a whole different situation. But any quick thoughts on that?
No, not necessarily. I think, yeah, I mean, what you're saying is true. I think that, that there's probably a few different outcomes of what Malachi can be that then very directly correlate to the outcomes of Kentucky. Like if he's not much better as a sophomore, you're going to underachieve, and a lot of what we're talking about in the preseason is going to end up not being true. If he's marginally better, then I think Kentucky can, be that top 10 to 15 team. If he becomes, like I tweeted out like a Sports Illustrated ranking that in like the 9th best center in college basketball. If he becomes
the 9th best center in college basketball.
Yeah. Oh, we're quite frankly, I get it. I'm the world's biggest Flory Badunga fan because he's from Indiana, or he came to Indiana, and I'm one of the guys that probably first found him and so shouted him to the masses. But like, Rob Doster today is talking about that he would like very incrementally take Flory Badunga over Malachi Moreno. I'll tell you this: if Malachi Moreno is as yes, but my point is, if he's almost as good as Flory Badunga, then like that's where we're going to start talking about Final Fours. Like in my opinion, that gap is large between Flory Badunga. I mean, Flory Badunga was second team All Big 12 last year, as Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. Like I think the gap between those two guys, in my opinion, is sizable. If it's not sizable, then like let's go, folks. Like I'm ready to play everybody tomorrow, because if he's that player, if he's that first round pick, especially lottery pick sort of guy next year, then to me the sky truly is the limit for what this team can be.
Yeah, and I'm not really worried about Malachi. I'm just interested to see how, what type of responsibilities he has compared to last year, and if it's significantly higher in terms of defense and rebounding and all that. Okay, couple more things. Does the kid get eligible? As of right now, he's eligible. He is. He's allowed to play. We're not lawyers here. We didn't go to law school or anything. I imagine this is still going to be challenged by the NCAA, but it probably gets to a point where there's just so many lawsuits that the NCAA just has to kind of back down. And this would be different if this was football and the season starts next week or whatever it is, like, because then there's just not enough of a runway. But now the NCAA will have some time to try and battle it. I mean, what do you put the percentage chance at that he's eligible? I mean, right now I'd probably say 80% that he ends up still playing for Kentucky, but I think the NCAA is going to try and at least make this make this more of a conversation than it probably needs to be.
Right. Yeah. I don't know if I would go as high as 80%, but I would say that, I mean, if for no other reason other than you're right, he is, I guess, eligible today, then I would say it's probably, greater than 50% that I would lean towards him playing. I also, with some of the cases, some of the stays and different things the NCAA has gotten in different areas, like it does seem like they have a little bit of a case if they want to like truly fight this to the 11th hour. Like I think it could get really interesting of do these guys have eligibility or not? And I think regardless of where your stance is or whether it should or shouldn't or anything like that, I think at this point it does kind of come down to all right, at what point does it become easier and cleaner to sort of give up the fight from the NCAA standpoint?
If week one of this football season hits and you've got all these fifth-year guys playing, I think it's going to be hard to then sit here and tell all these college basketball kids that they can't play.
Right, yeah, and also then it's like, okay, how do you put the toothpaste back in the tube, so to speak, of like, all right, you played week one, you played week two, maybe as a basketball player you play in November. Well, then, some big Supreme Court case comes down in December and says they're all ineligible. It's like, okay, well, what do we do now? Like, do you have to vacate those games? Do you act like they didn't happen? Do you have individual vigilantes from the NCAA committee saying, it becomes very hairy. Yeah, you muted my mic there for a second, Zach. But I think it just becomes very difficult from an NCAA standpoint to fight this the longer it goes. And I'm one, admittedly, from the beginning, maybe I'm a believer in like people should be allowed to make rules. Like I didn't think these guys should be eligible. I kind of still think that. Like I wish the NCAA had power to make their own rules. It is a voluntary member institution. I don't understand why all of, like I maybe I'm just a
because they can get all these courts involved, man. And
yeah,
then it just becomes bigger
I'm
than
just
that.
a redneck hick from Indiana. Like maybe I don't know any better, but like I don't understand why the NCAA can't make rules and enforce them. I don't get it. But in these days when everything's just a lawsuit away, fine. And I do think maybe in hindsight, you do kind of wish that like surely the NCAA saw this coming. So would it have been better to be like, hey, just let just let the boys play and like get out of the way and make it be a little smoother. I don't know, but again, we're starting to wade into waters that are above our pay grades. But yes, I for no real reason, I have no legal expertise. Again, he's eligible today. I also, like I've said, I think that as the fight goes on, I think the NCAA might lean towards just sort of giving up a little bit, so to speak. So I probably do lean towards him playing.
Last thing here, Justin McBride and Usman Njai. I'm sure this has been an interesting last however many days for them. You and I were kind of already like before all this. Who did you kind of think would be the starter at the four on for the first that preseason game against Texas Tech? Would you have said Njai?
I've been team Justin McBride all off season, so I would have said him. Just I mean, hey, I know things have sounded good, yeah, in regards to Njai, but just based on what I have access to, I'm less sold on Njai, and I'm a pretty big fan of Justin McBride.
And that's probably where I was too. I was leaning McBride a little bit, even though he missed some time with the sickness over the summer. And Usman had some good summer buzz. I was probably leaning McBride a little bit, but I was still kind of in the camp that you could probably just pencil them in for 18 minutes each or whatever it is type thing.
Yeah.
Now I don't know, because now it might be like do you do a game by game thing, or do you just kind of pick one that you trust more? Like now, do you almost feel like you can lean more into Njai as being like, I feel like with McBride, it was more of the safer option because he had all the experience. He'd played before. He's probably a smoother fit as like a shooting guy, as like a shooting four-man. Njai is still a shooting four-man, but, a little bit less proven track record with the whole overseas thing. He was a low percentage guy. How do you kind of see the backup spot? Because we're all going to, like, Mark Mitchell's going to be the starting four. It's probably going to be Zoom, Alex, Milan, Mark Mitchell, and Malachi Moreno. How do you kind of see that backup four spot shaking out? Because now I could almost see Njai being the guy that plays more just because he can bring a little bit more skill to the floor, or maybe a little bit more flavor, a little bit more flair to it, where you don't have to rely on that guy for 25 minutes. Now you can rely on him for 15 or 12 or whatever it is. Any big thoughts on how now the backup four spot will change? Because I'm sure that Usman and Justin McBride were probably not too happy to have that news come down about Mark Mitchell.
Right. Yeah. And I can understand that, like you're not normally adding people on August 22nd, like a week or so before school starts. So yes, I'm sure they were, all of a sudden their roles changed at a time where normally that doesn't happen. But yeah, when you look at it and you assume Mark Mitchell's going to play 25 to 30 minutes a game. I mean, the dude played almost 34 minutes a game at Missouri last year. We're sitting here saying we think he's going to be Kentucky's best player. It's hard to imagine him not play. Like, why would you not want that guy to play 30 minutes a game? So now at the four spot, that only leaves 10 minutes. There's only so many minutes to go around. And, I think the other side of the coin, I sort of agree with what you're saying about, maybe this is sort of the runway to giving Njai more of a chance because, you have that proven commodity in Mitchell and you can maybe take more of a swing at things and say, hey, like, let's see if this guy can come in and get some buckets or whatever. I also look at it as being a positive situation where, like, hey, if Njai is not ready to actually help you, which again, like, I'm still more in the camp, like my concern is, can Njai play at all? Like, again, I might be proven very wrong on that. Like, I would like to go into this season with the opportunity where Njai doesn't play. And it's not because I have anything against him. I think that obviously Mark Mitchell's a proven commodity. I think Justin McBride has proven that he could certainly give you a very valuable 10 to 15 minutes off the bench. If Usman Njai is so good that he has to play, that's an awesome situation to be in. But I would also like to be in the situation where you don't have to play him just because you need the minutes. And I think that that's now where you're at a little bit. Also, you can get creative. Like, I think especially Justin McBride, like he could maybe slide down and play the 3 a little bit as well. I mean, when you consider how big you're going to be at the 3 with Milan Momcilovic, I mean, Justin McBride moves around as good or better than Milan Momcilovic does. So if you're going to have 30 minutes a game of Momcilovic at the 3, I don't think it's insane to say that McBride could play some minutes at the 3. Like if a Cam Williams injury, kind of lingers around for a while or whatever it is. I also think if Cam Williams is available to play, he's going to be a plug and play guy for as many minutes as you can get him off the bench. But personally, I go into this year thinking, all right, I have Jerome Morton as my kind of proven backup guard. And then if Mason Williams is truly good enough that he needs to play in the games, that's a positive. Then kind of on the wing /4 spot, you have Cam Williams and Justin McBride. I feel good about those guys.
Braden Hawthorne.
Yeah, and then you have Hawthorne and Njai, who, again, if they're good enough that they need to play, great. If they're not, good. We have enough guys. And then probably the biggest question mark is how many games does Big Frank play? Because if he's not there on a game-to-game basis, then you don't really have that backup 5 man. Like, are you going to actually play Reese Potter in the games? Like, I don't mean that as a joke necessarily. Like, I mean,
or do you just put Mitchell at the 5 and do that?
Yeah. Is that where you go more Mitchell at the 5? But I would feel really good about the backup 5 if it's Big Frank for 35 games, because like the dude's pretty darn good. He's one of the best rebounders and one of the best shot blockers in college basketball in the minutes that he plays. It's just a question of how many minutes, how many games he actually plays in. So like there's a path to this bench being pretty good, especially if some of those guys that I have outside of the rotation, if they end up being good enough where they need to play, then I think you become even more talented. And like, if it was just one of Hawthorne or Njai that kind of break through and become like, dang, we got to get this guy in there, then to me, that's where you really start to get excited about even the depth of this Kentucky team.
Yeah, there is a lot of depth now, especially at those 3, 4, 5 spots. It's getting a little tight over there. So it'll be. I wonder if can Braden Hawthorne sue for a transfer portal window? And can he just sue the NCAA and say, "Hey, open the portal for me and let me go"? Like,
I think anything is possible. Everything is a lawyer away, is what I've learned.
Exactly. So hopefully we don't get into that spot as well. But yeah, it's going to be interesting for Mark Pope to figure out how he's going to dole out all those minutes and figure out rotation. Especially if there's a world where Cam Williams is healthy to go by the start of the season. So then you got a lot of mouths to feed. So I'm never too worried about that necessarily when it's like when the guard spot and all that, but you got a lot of guys at these forward spots that are going to want to play. So I'm very curious to see how Mark Pope handles all that. Any other final thoughts on Mark Mitchell before we close this up here? You said you think he'll be Kentucky's best player. What are your quick expectations for him next season? Do you expect him to make an All-SEC team next year, or kind of how do you see things playing out for him? And then we'll get out of here.
He better, or Kentucky's not going to be what we want him to be. Like I think that you're in a position where both him and Momcilovic, especially when you consider like they're going to be preseason All-SEC guys. You're going to assume that Kentucky's a top 4 team in the SEC. Like that's going to get you at least one first and one second team guy. Like those are going to be the 2 guys I would sure think and probably need to be like, okay, maybe there's a scenario where, Malachi becomes the lottery pick or Alex Wilkins is a stud and they somehow surpass one of those guys. But like, I have a hard time imagining this team being what we want Kentucky to be and those 2 guys not being your first 2 All-SEC guys. So yeah, my expectation is for Mark Mitchell to come in to be Kentucky's leading scorer and to probably be a first team All-SEC guy this season. I think that's what you need out of him. That's what you can expect out of him. And I think that he is very, very capable of delivering on those admittedly very high expectations.
Yeah, I also agree. I think Mark Mitchell and Milan will both make all SEC. Kentucky will be a top 4 team in the SEC. Get back to that Friday start for an SEC tournament. That would be awesome. I think Kentucky is in line to do all that with Mark Mitchell now on board. Big addition there for Mark Pope. Very rather interesting offseason for one Mark Pope, going from the Whiff King to now a guy who has a potential top 10 roster. Mark Mitchell kind of fell into his lap a little bit, but still, not really. Like, this is happening to a lot of teams across. LSU is trying to build a roster right now, doing off all these type of guys. So these are the name of the game. These are the rules, and Mark Pope is playing it to the best visibility into a critical year 3, and it looks like he's got Kentucky as a at least borderline top 10 team going to the preseason. So that was another episode of Zoom Action. We'll start to kind of get back into the rhythm with these now that vacations are over and we're inching closer and closer to college basketball season. But this has been a fun episode. Brandon, as always, if everyone makes sure to like, comment, subscribe to all the fun things. It's been nice having a bunch of people in the chat. I haven't really been able to read any of the comments while I've been producing, but hopefully people have been having fun in there.
Oh, yeah.
Otherwise, we will see you all next time. From Zack Geoghegan, from Brandon Ramsey, from the KSR Zoom Action Show, we will see you all next time.